What is fear? Do you think you know what fear is? Do you think you've experienced true terror? You cannot know the true meaning of fear unless you stand in a room where time is broken and bleeds incessantly, where yesterday and tomorrow collapse into the same suffocating moment. My name is Marcus Hale. I work in a department within the CIA that has never been heard of before, that doesn't appear on any organizational chart, that is divided into specific branches. We deal with situations that are too strange, too sensitive, or too politically dangerous for others to want to deal with. Situations that would cause the public to question what they know about reality. This is the story of Red Meridian, the mission that ended my career. The mission that still wakes me up at 3:47 a.m. every single night, drenched in sweat, hearing those impossible radio transmissions echoing in my skull. It started with a phone call 3 weeks ago. "Hale, we've got a situation." Lieutenant Owen Briggs' voice crackled through my encrypted line at 2:15 in the morning. "How fast can you get to Nevada?" I was already throwing clothes into a duffel bag. When Briggs called at that hour, you didn't ask questions. You just moved. 6 hours if I push it, I said, pulling on my boots. "Make it 4. We're picking up signals from Red Meridian." My blood went cold. Red Meridian was supposed to be dead. The radar installation had been decommissioned in 1983, officially abandoned after budget cuts during the Cold War. But I knew the real story. Everyone in our division knew. Red Meridian didn't shut down because of money. It shut down because something happened there in 1980, something that killed most of the crew and drove the survivors insane. "Briggs, Red Meridian's been dark for 42 years. Are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that 3 nights ago, our satellites picked up active radar emissions from that location, full-spectrum sweeps, military-grade encryption patterns. And Marcus..." He paused, and I could hear the tension in his breathing. "The encryption is 43 years old. It's the exact signature we used in 1980. The desert highway stretched before me like a black ribbon laid across the void. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the darkness, and beyond that, nothing but endless Nevada wasteland. The kind of emptiness that makes you feel small. The kind that reminds you how many things can disappear out here and never be found. I'd been driving for 3.5 hours straight, fueled by truck stop coffee and the gnawing certainty that I was heading towards something I didn't understand. The radio had given up an hour ago, replaced by static and the occasional phantom voice that might have been a distant station or might have been something else entirely. My phone buzzed. "Briggs, sending coordinates. Red Meridian Station, 37.2491 degrees north, 116.0544 degrees west. Team assembles 0600. Do not approach alone. Do not deviate from protocol." I checked the dashboard clock. 5:47 a.m. 13 minutes to spare. The facility appeared on the horizon like a skeleton rising from the sand. Chain-link fences sagging with age, rusted warning signs barely legible in the pre-dawn gloom. The main building was a squat, brutalist concrete structure that looked like it had been designed to withstand a nuclear blast, probably because it had. 2 vehicles were already parked in the gravel lot, Briggs' black SUV and a civilian sedan I didn't recognize. As I pulled in beside them, I saw 3 figures standing near the entrance. Briggs, unmistakable in his tactical gear, was pointing at something on a tablet. Next to him stood a woman I'd never seen before, early 30s, cargo pants, and a worn leather jacket, laptop bags slung over her shoulder. The third figure made my stomach drop. Gerald Knox, the only survivor who'd kept his sanity. Barely. I'd seen Knox's file. Hell, I'd memorized it. He'd been a radar operator at Red Meridian in 1980 when Captain James Ridley's test flight vanished mid-mission. Knox had been in the control room when the screen started showing impossible readings, when the radio transmissions began playing backwards, when Ridley's voice came through the speakers begging for help 6 hours after his plane had already crashed. Except there was no crash site, no wreckage, no body. Knox had spent 3 months in a psychiatric facility after that night. The official report said nervous breakdown. The classified addendum said something else entirely. Temporal disassociation event, origin unknown. Hail. Briggs nodded as I approached. His face was drawn, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Good timing. This is Rina Alden, our electronics specialist. She's the one who identified the signal patterns. Rina extended a hand. Her grip was firm, confident. I've heard about you, Hale. They say you don't scare easy. They haven't sent me to Red Meridian before, I replied. Knox hadn't moved. He stood with his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, staring at the main building with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear, yes, but also something else. Recognition, maybe. Or resignation. Mr. Knox, I said carefully, I didn't expect to see you here. His eyes flicked to me, and for a moment I saw something ancient and exhausted in them. Didn't expect to come back, he said quietly. But when Lieutenant Briggs told me about the signals, I knew. It's starting again. What's starting again? Rina asked. Knox's jaw tightened. The echo. That's what I used to call it. Time doesn't work right at Red Meridian. It never did. We just didn't realize it until Ridley... He trailed off, shaking his head. You'll understand soon enough. You'll wish you didn't. Briggs cleared his throat. Our primary objective is to assess the source of the radar emissions and determine if there's an active threat. Secondary objective, recover any salvageable intelligence from the original incident. This is strictly need to know. Nothing we find here leaves this team. He handed each of us a dosimeter badge and a handheld radiation detector, standard procedure for abandoned Cold War facilities, most of which were contaminated with God knows what. One more thing, Briggs added, his voice dropping lower. The signals are stronger at night, between 0100 and 0400 specifically. That's when the original incident occurred. That's when... He glanced at Knox. That's when we're most likely to encounter anomalies. Anomalies, I repeated. That's one hell of a euphemism, Lieutenant. You'll understand when you see it, Knox said again. You'll wish you didn't. The entrance required 3 separate keycard swipes, each one triggering a series of magnetic locks that groaned like metal bones shifting. The interior was exactly what I'd expected. Decades of dust, peeling paint, and the particular smell of abandonment. Mildew and rust and something else. Something faintly metallic that made my teeth ache. Our flashlight beams cut through the darkness, illuminating corridors that stretched too far and doorways that opened into rooms that felt wrong somehow. Not physically wrong, dimensionally wrong, like the space inside was larger than the walls should allow. Control room's this way, Knox said, his voice barely above a whisper. He moved with the mechanical precision of someone following a path burned into their memory. Left at the first junction, right at the second, down a stairwell that descended into deeper darkness. The control room was a time capsule from 1980. Rows of monitoring stations with cathode ray displays, analog dials, switches labeled with yellowed tape. Everything covered in a thick layer of dust, except for one station in the center. Someone had been here recently. The dust around that console was disturbed, showing clear handprints on the keyboard. The chair was pulled back slightly, as if whoever had been sitting there had stood up quickly and never returned. This is where Ridley's transmission came through, Knox said, standing behind the active station. His hand hovered over the power switch, trembling slightly. This is where it all started. Rina was already unpacking her equipment, setting up a portable spectrum analyzer and connecting it to the main console. The signal's definitely originating from this facility, she said, watching data scroll across her laptop screen. But the power source? That doesn't make sense. This place has been off-grid for 42 years. There's no generator, no external connection, so where's the electricity coming from? Same place the signals are coming from, Knox said quietly. Somewhere that doesn't follow the rules. I explored the perimeter of the room while Rina worked. The walls were covered in maps and charts, tactical overlays of the surrounding desert. One section showed flight patterns, including a red line marked Ridley, Final Flight. The line extended from Red Meridian, then simply stopped mid-trajectory. Not crashed, just ended. "Briggs," I called. "Come look at this." He joined me at the map wall, frowning as he examined the charts. "What am I looking at?" "The flight path. Ridley's plane didn't disappear over the desert. According to this, he vanished directly above the facility. At 30,000 feet, moving at Mach 2, he just ceased to exist. Maybe the map's wrong. Or maybe something reached up and grabbed him." Briggs gave me a sharp look. "Let's stick to verifiable data, Hale." But we both knew that data wouldn't matter here, not in a place like Red Meridian. Rena's laptop chimed. "I've got something. The signal's pulsing in a specific pattern. It's not random. It's a message." We gathered around her screen. The waveform displayed a repeating sequence, complex but definitely structured. Morse code, I thought at first. But no, the intervals were wrong. "Can you decode it?" Briggs asked. "Give me a minute." Rena's fingers flew across the keyboard, running the signal through various decryption algorithms. Then she stopped, her face going pale. "Oh, God. What is it?" She turned the laptop so we could all see the screen. The decoded message was simple, terrifying. "They're still here. We're still here. Help us. It's happening again." The timestamp at the bottom of the message made my blood freeze. Transmitted. October 17th, 1980, 03:47:22. Knox's hands were shaking now. That was the exact moment Ridley vanished, down to the second. "That's impossible," Briggs said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Signals can't travel through time." "They can here," Knox whispered. "That's what I've been trying to tell you. Red Meridian isn't just a place. It's a wound, a tear in the fabric of time itself. And whatever happened to Ridley, whatever trapped him in that moment, it's still happening. Right now. It's always happening." The lights flickered. Just once. But in that brief pulse of illumination, I saw something that made my heart stop. Standing in the doorway, visible for less than a second, was a figure in a flight suit, face obscured by a helmet visor that reflected our flashlight beams like a mirror. Behind him, I could see other shapes, moving, watching. Then, the darkness returned, and they were gone. "Did you see that?" I breathed. Rena nodded, her laptop forgotten. "What the hell was that?" Knox's voice was hollow. "That was Captain Ridley, or what's left of him. He's been trying to get home for 43 years, but he can't. None of them can. Because in here, time doesn't flow. It pools. It stagnates. And everyone who gets caught in it stays caught forever." A sound echoed through the facility. Distant at first, then growing louder. The unmistakable whine of jet engines, but not modern engines. These were the throaty, powerful turbines of a 1980s fighter jet pushed to their absolute limit. "That's not possible," Briggs said. "There's no aircraft within 50 miles of here." The sound grew louder, closer, until it felt like the jet was directly overhead. The walls vibrated, dust rained from the ceiling, and through it all, cutting through the mechanical scream, came a voice on the radio. "Red Meridian, this is Ghost 79er. I have a situation. Instruments are going haywire. Altitude indicator showing negative 30,000 feet, compass spinning. I'm requesting immediate emergency landing clearance." It was Ridley's voice, clear as day, desperate and confused and terrified. And it was coming from the radio console that hadn't had power in 4 decades. Knox reached out and picked up the microphone. His hand was steady now, as if he'd been waiting 43 years for this exact moment. "Ghost 79er, this is Red Meridian. We copy your emergency. Be advised, you need to eject immediately. Do not attempt landing. Repeat, Do not attempt landing. The facility is compromised. Negative, Red Meridian. Ejection system is not responding. I'm coming in whether you're ready or not. ETA 2 minutes. The radio went silent. The jet engine sound continued, circling overhead like a predator. Rena grabbed my arm. Marcus, look at the radiation detectors. All 4 of our dosimeters were lighting up like Christmas trees, but not with radiation, with something else. The needles were spinning backwards, the digital displays showing negative values. Impossible readings that violated every law of physics. We need to get out of here, Briggs said, his command voice finally cracking. Right now. But Knox shook his head. It's too late for that. The Echo has you now. Once it starts, there's no leaving until it's done. You can try to run, but you'll just end up back here. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, precipitously. Our breath came out in white clouds. Frost began forming on the monitoring equipment, spreading across the screens like living crystal. And then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. The jet engine sound cut off mid-scream. The radio went dead. The temperature normalized. The dosimeters settled back to 0. For a long moment, we stood in absolute silence, waiting for something else to happen. Is it over? Rena asked. Knox's laugh was bitter and broken. Over? No. This is just the beginning. The Echo plays out the same way every time. First the transmission, then the sighting. Then... He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hollow with remembered terror. Then you start noticing the time loops, the moments that repeat, the conversations you've already had, the places you've already been, even though you're experiencing them for the first time. You're saying we're stuck in some kind of temporal loop? I asked. Not exactly. It's more like we're experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously, past, present, future, all bleeding together. Ridley's still up there, still trying to land. The crew who died in 1980 are still dying, and we... He looked at each of us in turn. We're still trying to figure out what's happening, just like every other team that's come here. Wait, Briggs said sharply. What do you mean, every other team? Knox smiled, and it was the saddest expression I'd ever seen. You think this is the first time the government has sent people to investigate? They've been sending teams for 43 years. Different people, different equipment, different approaches, but it always ends the same way. Either you escape before midnight on the 3rd day, or you become part of the Echo. Another ghost in the machine, repeating the same actions forever. That's insane, I said. But even as I spoke, I felt a cold certainty settling in my gut, because I'd noticed something. The dust patterns around that active console, the handprints, they looked familiar. They looked exactly like the size and shape of my own hands. I'd been here before, or I would be here in the future, or both. Time didn't work right at Red Meridian. Rena was frantically checking her equipment. We need to document everything. If there's any chance of understanding what's happening here, we need data, concrete, measurable data. Data won't help you, Knox said. But go ahead. Try. Everyone does. I moved to one of the windows, looking out over the desert. Dawn was breaking, painting the sand in shades of amber and gold. Beautiful and terrible and indifferent. Out there, the world continued normally. Time flowed in one direction. Cause preceded effect. Reality made sense. But in here, in Red Meridian, nothing made sense anymore. A reflection appeared in the window, standing behind me, wearing a flight suit. I spun around, hand going to my sidearm, but there was no one there. Just Briggs and Rena and Knox, all focused on their own tasks. None of them had seen what I'd seen. Or maybe they had, and they were just learning to ignore it, learning to accept that here, in this place where time bled and pooled and stagnated, seeing ghosts was normal. The radio crackled to life again. This time, it was a different voice. Younger. Panicked. Red Meridian, this is Security Team Alpha. We have a situation in the underground tunnels. Repeat, we have a situation. We're detecting, I don't know how to describe it, temporal anomalies. Time is moving wrong down here. We're requesting immediate extraction. I reached for the microphone, but Knox grabbed my wrist. Don't answer that. Why not? Because that's you, Hale. That's your voice. That transmission is coming from about 6 hours in your future, when you and your team go down into the tunnels to investigate the source of the anomalies. And if you answer it, you'll create a causality loop that will trap you forever. My mouth went dry. How do you know what I'm going to do 6 hours from now? Knox's eyes were ancient and sad. Because I've seen this exact scenario play out 43 times. Every team follows the same pattern. Every time someone goes into the tunnels, and every time they find something down there that changes everything. What do they find? Rena asked quietly. The source, Knox said. The heart of the echo. The place where Ridley's plane isn't just missing. It's existing in a state of quantum superposition, present and absent at the same time. And when you see it, when you truly understand what's happening here, that's when you have to make a choice. What choice? Briggs demanded. Knox looked at each of us in turn, and I saw something in his expression that made my blood run cold. Not fear, not horror, but a deep, weary knowledge of what was coming. Whether to try to save Ridley, he said quietly, or whether to destroy Red Meridian entirely, sealing the temporal anomaly forever and trapping him in that eternal moment. Either way, someone doesn't make it out. That's the price. That's always been the price. The radio transmission continued, my own future voice growing more desperate. Red Meridian, please respond. Time is fragmenting down here. We're experiencing severe temporal disassociation. I'm seeing... The transmission dissolved into static, then cut off entirely. Silence fell over the control room like a shroud. Rena's spectrum analyzer beeped. She checked the reading, and her face went pale. The signal strength is increasing. It's building toward something, a peak event. When? I asked. Based on the pattern, approximately 11 hours from now, 3:47 p.m. local time. The same time Ridley had vanished. The same time the original incident occurred. Knox nodded slowly. The echo is strongest at that moment. That's when the barrier between timelines is thinnest. That's when you can see everything, past, present, future, all layered over each other like images on transparent film. And that's when you'll have to make your choice. I'm not making any choices until I understand what we're dealing with, Briggs said firmly. Hale, Alden, we're going to do a full sweep of the facility. Every room, every level. I want a complete tactical assessment. Knox, you're with me. You know this place better than anyone. I knew it in 1980, Knox corrected, but the layout changes. The rooms rearrange themselves. Distance and direction become flexible when time starts breaking down. But Briggs was already moving toward the door, his command presence reasserting itself. Then we document the changes. We map the anomalies. We figure out what makes this place tick, and then we decide how to proceed. Standard protocol. Knox smiled sadly. There's nothing standard about Red Meridian, Lieutenant, but we'll try it your way. We always do. As we filed out of the control room, I caught one last glimpse of the radio console. The dust patterns around it were different now. New handprints had appeared, overlapping the old ones, layers of interaction, separated by hours or years or decades, all existing simultaneously. I looked down at my own hands and wondered which version of me had left those marks. The one standing here right now, or the one who would come later, after seeing what waited in the tunnels. After making the choice Knox had warned us about. Out in the corridor, where our flashlight beams revealed something new. Something that definitely hadn't been there when we'd entered. Footprints in the dust, fresh ones, still settling, leading deeper into the facility toward a stairwell marked sub-level access, authorized personnel only. The footprints were military-issue boots, standard tactical gear. They matched the treads of my own boots exactly. I'd already been this way, or I was about to be, or both. Time didn't work right at Red Meridian, and we were just beginning to understand how wrong it really was. The footprints led us down 3 flights of stairs, deeper into the guts of Red Meridian than any official blueprint showed. The air grew colder with each step, carrying that metallic taste that made my fillings ache. Our radiation detectors stayed quiet, but something else was happening to our equipment. Rena's laptop kept displaying error messages, the system clock jumping forward and backward randomly. My watch had stopped entirely at 3:47, the second hand twitching back and forth over the same 2 seconds like a trapped insect. "The temporal distortion is intensifying," Rena said, her voice echoing strangely in the stairwell. "I'm reading chronometric variances of up to 6 hours in either direction. We could be experiencing time dilation effects." "In English," Briggs said tersely, "time is moving at different speeds in different parts of the facility. What feels like minutes to us might be hours somewhere else, or vice versa." Knox nodded grimly. "The deeper you go, the worse it gets. The sub-levels were built during the Cold War for weapons testing. They dug down almost 200 feet, right into the bedrock. But when they hit that depth—" He paused, his hand trailing along the concrete wall. "They found something that was already there. Something old. Something that didn't belong in our timeline at all." "What did they find?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. "A room that wasn't on the plans. A chamber that the construction crew swore hadn't been there the day before. Inside it, they found equipment. Technology that predated human civilization by thousands of years, but somehow still functioning. Still transmitting. Still waiting." Briggs stopped walking. "You're telling me there's alien technology under this facility?" "Not alien," Knox said quietly. "Human, future human, or past human. I don't think anyone really knows anymore, but whatever it is, it's been creating temporal echoes in this location for a very long time. The military just built Red Meridian on top of it without realizing what they were doing. And when Ridley's flight passed overhead at the exact moment they were running full-power radar tests," he spread his hands. "The combination created a resonance, a feedback loop, and Ridley got caught in it." We reached the bottom of the stairwell. A heavy door marked Sub-Level 4. Restricted access stood before us, partially open. Emergency lighting flickered beyond, casting shadows that moved wrong, flowing upward instead of falling down. Through the gap, I could hear something. A rhythmic sound, like breathing, or like machinery cycling on and off, in perfect time with my own heartbeat. "This is where it happened," Knox whispered. "This is where the crew was stationed when Ridley vanished. This is where most of them died." Rena checked her equipment. "The temporal distortion is off the scale here. My sensors can't even establish a baseline. We could be standing in multiple time periods simultaneously." "We are," Knox said. "Look." He pointed through the doorway. In the flickering light, I could see the corridor beyond. And standing in that corridor, frozen mid-step, were figures in 1980s military uniforms. Some were running. Some were screaming, their mouths open in silent terror. Some were simply standing there, hands clutched to their heads, faces contorted in agony. But they weren't moving. They were locked in place like statues, suspended in the moment of their deaths. "Jesus Christ," Briggs breathed. "They're still experiencing it," Knox said. "The moment the temporal anomaly manifested and tore their minds apart. They've been trapped in that instant for 43 years. Conscious, aware, unable to move or scream or die, just frozen in endless suffering." I wanted to look away, but couldn't. One of the frozen figures was a young woman, maybe 25, her face frozen in an expression of absolute terror as she reached toward something invisible, something that had been killing her for over 4 decades. "Can we help them?" Rena asked, her voice breaking. Knox's silence was answer enough. We moved carefully through the corridor of frozen personnel, our flashlight beams washing over their horror-struck faces. None of them tracked our movement. None of them showed any awareness of our presence. They were locked in their own personal eternities, experiencing a single moment stretched across decades. But then I saw something that made my blood freeze. Standing among the other frozen figures, reaching toward that same invisible horror, was someone I recognized. It was me. Same tactical gear, same sidearm, same everything. Except this version of me was frozen in terror, mouth open in a scream that had lasted 43 years. "Hale?" Briggs had seen it too. "What the hell is that?" Knox's voice was hollow. "I told you, time doesn't work right here. That's you from a future timeline, or a past one, or both. You got caught in the echo, just like these people did, just like everyone does eventually." "That's not possible," I said, but my voice sounded distant and strange even to my own ears. "I'm standing right here. I can't be in 2 places at once." "You're thinking linearly," Knox said. "But in Red Meridian, time isn't a line. It's a pool. A stagnant pool where every moment exists simultaneously. That version of you experienced this moment and got trapped in it. This version of you is experiencing it now, and somewhere in the future, another version of you will experience it again. All of you are real. All of you are happening at the same time." Rena was frantically documenting everything with her equipment, her hands shaking as she worked. "This is impossible. This violates every law of causality. If Hale is already here, frozen in time, then how can he also be here with us now?" "Because the echo doesn't care about causality," Knox said. "That's the whole point. Cause and effect become meaningless when time is broken. You can die before you're born. You can save someone who's already dead. You can meet yourself coming and going." Briggs was backing away from the frozen figures, his command presence finally cracking. "We need to abort. Get everyone out of here right now. This situation is beyond our operational parameters." But Knox shook his head. "The only way out is through. If you try to leave now, you'll just loop back to where you started. The echo has you. The only way to break free is to reach the source and make the choice." "What choice?" I demanded, unable to tear my eyes away from my own frozen face. "What am I choosing? Whether to save Ridley or seal the anomaly? Whether to risk becoming part of the echo yourself, or to let him suffer forever? It's the same choice everyone faces. The same choice I faced 43 years ago." "What did you choose?" Rena asked quietly. Knox's expression was ancient and broken. "I chose to leave him, to walk away, to let him stay trapped in that moment forever because I was too afraid to risk joining him. And I've been living with that decision for 43 years. Every night I hear his voice on the radio, begging for help. Every night I see his face in my dreams. And every night I wonder if I made the right choice." The corridor ahead opened into a massive chamber, easily 100 feet across. And in the center of that chamber, suspended in midair with no visible support, was something that shouldn't have been possible. It was a jet fighter, Ridley's jet, the one that had vanished in 1980. But it wasn't fully there. It flickered, phasing in and out of existence like a bad television signal. One moment it was solid and real, metal gleaming in our flashlight beams. The next moment it was translucent, ghostly, barely visible. And through it all, I could see the pilot still in the cockpit, hands on the controls, face hidden behind the visor. Still flying, still trying to land, after 43 years. "My God," Briggs whispered. The temporal distortion around the aircraft was so intense it was visible to the naked eye, like heat shimmer, but fractured and wrong. Reality itself seemed to bend and warp around it, creating impossible angles and geometries that hurt to look at. Rena's equipment was going insane, alarms screaming as sensors maxed out. The chronometric readings are impossible. The aircraft is existing in a quantum superposition state, simultaneously present in multiple timelines. It's here and not here, real and unreal, alive and dead. Schrodinger's fighter jet, I muttered. Exactly, Knox said. And Ridley's the cat. He's been stuck in this state since the moment the anomaly manifested. He can't land because the ground doesn't exist in his timeline. He can't eject because he's frozen in the moment of decision. He can't even die because death requires time to progress. He's just trapped, forever flying, forever falling, forever dying, but never dead. The radio crackled to life, Ridley's voice cutting through the static. But this time it wasn't a transmission from the past. It was happening right now, in real time. Red Meridian, I can see you down there. I can see all of you, past, present, future. You're like ghosts, walking through each other, never quite connecting. Is that what I am too? A ghost? Am I still alive, or have I been dead for 40 years and just don't know it yet? Knox grabbed the portable radio from Briggs' belt and keyed the mic. His voice was choked with emotion. Ridley, it's Knox. I'm here. I'm so sorry I left you. I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough to try to bring you back. Knox? Ridley's voice held a note of desperate hope. You're still alive? How long has it been? It feels like forever. It feels like seconds. Time doesn't work right up here. I can see my whole life laid out below me like a map. I can see myself being born. I can see myself dying. I can see every choice I ever made and every choice I didn't make. It's beautiful and terrible, and I want it to stop. Please, make it stop. Rena was working frantically at her laptop, analyzing the data streaming from her sensors. I think I can map the temporal field. If we can synchronize with Ridley's timeline, we might be able to bring him back. But it would require someone to physically enter the distortion field and establish a connection. And whoever does that will become part of the echo, Knox finished. We'll get trapped just like Ridley, just like all those frozen people in the corridor. Not necessarily, Rena said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. If we time it perfectly, during the peak of the resonance cycle, there might be a window. A moment when the timelines align just enough to allow passage both ways. But the timing would have to be exact, down to the millisecond. When? Briggs asked. Rena checked her readings. 3:47 p.m., local time, the same moment Ridley vanished, the same moment the anomaly manifested. That's when the barrier will be thinnest. I checked my watch, forgetting for a moment that it had stopped. What time is it now? 2:14 p.m., Briggs said, checking his tactical chronometer. We have 93 minutes. 93 minutes to decide if we're going to risk everything to save one man, Knox said quietly. 93 minutes to figure out if his life is worth potentially trapping ourselves in the echo forever. That's the choice. That's always been the choice. The jet flickered again, and for a brief moment I could see Ridley clearly through the cockpit glass. He was young, maybe 30. Same age I'd been when I joined the division. He looked tired and scared and impossibly lonely. A man trapped outside of time, watching the universe move forward without him. We have to try, I said. The words surprised me, but as soon as I spoke them, I knew they were true. We can't just leave him up there. Briggs shook his head. Hale, I understand the impulse, but we need to think strategically. If we lose personnel trying to rescue someone who might already be effectively dead, we've failed our mission. Our mission is to assess and contain threats, I shot back. Ridley isn't a threat. He's a victim. And if we can bring him back, we might be able to understand how the anomaly works, how to prevent it from happening again. Or we might just add more ghosts to the collection, Briggs said, gesturing at the frozen figures in the corridor behind us. Knox was staring up at the flickering aircraft, his face carved with decades of regret. I left him once. I won't do it again. If there's even a chance of bringing him home, I'm taking it, with or without authorization. This isn't your decision to make, Briggs said sharply. Isn't it? Knox turned to face him, and for the first time since we'd arrived, I saw steel in his eyes. I was here when this happened. I watched my friends die or go insane. I listened to Ridley begging for help while I stood safely on the ground, too scared to do anything. And I've lived with that cowardice for 43 years. So yes, Lieutenant, this absolutely is my decision to make. Rena's laptop chimed. I've got the resonance pattern mapped. If we're going to try this, we need to prepare now. The window will only be open for approximately 8 seconds. Someone will need to enter the distortion field, make physical contact with the aircraft, and establish a quantum entanglement with Ridley's timeline. Basically, you'll need to anchor him to our reality. How? I asked. Physical contact, skin to skin. It'll create a bioelectric link that should allow the timelines to synchronize. But whoever does it will experience the full force of the temporal distortion. You'll feel 43 years pass in 8 seconds. Your mind will try to process every possible timeline simultaneously. Most people would go insane. Most people, I repeated. But not everyone? Rena met my eyes. I honestly don't know. This is all theoretical. No one's ever tried to rescue someone from a temporal anomaly before, at least not successfully. There's another problem, Knox said quietly. The anomaly is self-reinforcing. Every time someone interacts with it, it gets stronger. If we try to pull Ridley out and fail, we might make things worse. The echo might expand, trapping more people. It could spread beyond the facility, beyond the desert. Eventually, it might envelop the entire region in a temporal stasis field. Briggs ran a hand through his hair. So we're damned if we try and damned if we don't. That's Red Meridian for you, Knox said bitterly. I looked up at the flickering aircraft, at Ridley's shadowy form, still fighting controls that would never respond. I thought about the frozen people in the corridor, trapped in eternal moments of suffering. I thought about Knox, carrying 43 years of guilt for a choice he'd made in the heat of crisis. And I thought about that other version of me, frozen in terror, screaming silently for decades. Was that my future? Was I already trapped in the echo, just not aware of it yet? I'll do it, I said. The words came out steady, sure. I'll go in. I'll bring him back. Hale, that's not... Briggs started. It has to be someone, I interrupted. And it can't be Knox. He's already been exposed to the anomaly once. Rena needs to stay here to monitor the equipment and tell me when the window opens. That leaves me. Briggs's jaw tightened. If you don't come back, I'm reporting this as a command decision failure. If I don't come back, I won't care about your report. Knox gripped my shoulder. Thank you for doing what I should have done 43 years ago. Don't thank me yet, I said, staring at the impossible aircraft floating in the center of the chamber. We still have to survive the next 90 minutes. But even as I spoke, I felt the weight of inevitability settling over me. This was always going to happen. I was always going to make this choice. Maybe that frozen version of me in the corridor was from a timeline where I'd succeeded. Or maybe it was from a timeline where I'd failed. Either way, the moment was approaching. 3:47 p.m. The convergence. The point where all possible timelines would collapse into a single instant, and I would be standing at the center of it, reaching for a ghost. Rena started setting up equipment around the perimeter of the chamber, placing sensors and transceivers at precise intervals. I'm creating a chronometric grid. It should help stabilize your timeline when you enter the distortion field. Think of it as an anchor, something to pull you back to the present if you start drifting. If I start drifting, I asked. When you enter the field, you're going to experience temporal displacement. Your consciousness will start sliding through time. You might see your past, your future, alternate versions of events that never happened or haven't happened yet. The important thing is to stay focused on the present moment. Focus on Ridley. Focus on making contact. Don't let yourself get lost in the other timelines. Easier said than done, Knox muttered. We spent the next hour preparing. Briggs tried 3 more times to contact headquarters for additional orders, but communications were completely dead. The facility was isolated, wrapped in its own bubble of broken time. I reviewed the mission parameters again and again, memorizing every detail. Enter the field when Rena gives the signal, move directly to the aircraft, make physical contact with Ridley through the cockpit glass if possible, or breach the cockpit if necessary. Hold contact for at least 5 seconds to establish quantum entanglement. Then retreat before the window closes. 8 seconds. That's all I had. 8 seconds to save a man who'd been falling for 43 years. At 3:30 p.m., the facility began to change. The walls started bleeding colors that didn't exist, impossible hues that my brain couldn't process. The air grew thick, viscous, like moving through water. And sounds became distorted, stretched out or compressed seemingly at random. Temporal destabilization is accelerating, Rena announced, her voice echoing strangely. The convergence is beginning. The frozen figures in the corridor behind us suddenly jerked into motion, taking a single step forward before freezing again. Then another step, then another. Moving in slow motion, their screams audible now as deep, drawn-out moans of terror. "They're coming back to life," Briggs said, raising his weapon. "No," Knox said. "They're just part of the echo. When the convergence happens, all timelines become visible simultaneously. We're seeing them move because we're experiencing multiple moments at once." The aircraft in the center of the chamber was becoming more solid, more real. I could hear the engines now, roaring at full throttle, could smell jet fuel and ozone and something else, something burnt and wrong. Ridley's voice came through the radio again, but this time it was layered, dozens of versions of him speaking simultaneously, some calm, some panicked, some resigned to fate. "I can see you all, every version, every timeline. You're beautiful and broken, and I understand now why it happened this way. Time isn't linear. It's not even circular. It's fractal. Infinite complexity repeating at every scale. And I'm at the center of one of those fractals, spinning forever." 3:42 p.m. 5 minutes. The chamber was filling with ghosts now, translucent figures walking through walls, through each other, through us. I saw myself multiple times, different versions from different timelines. Some were running, some were screaming. One was calmly taking notes, as if this was just another mission. And I saw others too. People I didn't recognize. Teams that had come before us, or would come after. All of them caught in the echo. All of them trapped in Red Meridian's eternal moment. "Hail," Rena called. Her form was starting to phase in and out, like she was struggling to stay anchored in this timeline. "You need to get ready. The window opens in 3 minutes. Once it does, you'll feel a pull. Like gravity, but sideways. Follow that pull. It'll lead you to the correct timeline." I moved to the edge of the distortion field. The air there was shimmering like heat waves, but cold. So cold my breath came out in white clouds that fell upward instead of dissipating. Knox stood beside me. "Whatever you see in there, don't believe it. The echo will try to convince you that you're trapped, that you've always been trapped, that there's no way out. But that's a lie. As long as you remember who you are, you can find your way back." "And if I forget?" His silence was answer enough. 3:45 p.m. 2 minutes. The jet was fully solid now, metal gleaming under impossible light. I could see Ridley clearly, hands gripping the controls, face pressed against the cockpit glass as he stared down at us, at me. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I felt it. The pull. The sideways gravity drawing me toward him, toward the center of the anomaly, toward the moment that had been repeating for 43 years. 60 seconds, Rena called. The frozen figures in the corridor were moving faster now, their screams reaching normal pitch. They were reliving their final moments in real time, experiencing their deaths again and again as the convergence approached. 30 seconds. The walls of the chamber began to dissolve, revealing other rooms, other spaces that shouldn't have been there. I saw the control room from earlier. I saw the exterior of the facility. I saw places I didn't recognize, buildings that might have been Red Meridian in the past or future or some alternate version of reality. All of it existing simultaneously. All of it real. 15 seconds. Ridley was screaming now, his voice cutting through the chaos. I can see it. I can see the convergence. All timelines are collapsing. We're all going to... Now, Rena shouted. Go now. I didn't think. I just moved. I stepped into the distortion field, and time shattered around me like glass. I was dying. No, I had already died. No, I would die in 3 seconds. All 3 statements were true simultaneously. The distortion field wasn't just temporal displacement. It was temporal immersion. I wasn't moving through time. I was existing in all possible moments at once. My consciousness fragmenting across every second of my life, like light through a prism. I saw myself as a child, running through sprinklers in my parents' backyard, laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. I saw myself graduating from the academy, young and idealistic and stupid. I saw myself older, scarred, broken by missions that hadn't happened yet. I saw myself dead, a dozen different ways in a dozen different timelines, shot, frozen, lost in the echo. Each death equally real, equally final. And through it all, I kept moving forward, or backward, or sideways. Direction lost all meaning when every possible path existed simultaneously. The aircraft was above me, below me, beside me. Distance became meaningless. I reached out, and my hands stretched across decades, my fingers trailing through moments like water. Focus. Focus on Ridley. Focus on the mission. But focusing was like trying to hold smoke. My thoughts kept sliding through time, experiencing memories that belonged to other versions of me. I remembered graduating from flight school even though I'd never been a pilot. I remembered dying in the 1980 incident even though I hadn't been born yet. I remembered growing old alone, haunted by the ghost of a mission I'd failed. Knox's voice reached me, stretched thin across time. Don't let yourself drift. Stay anchored. But I was already drifting, already dissolving into the echo, already becoming another ghost trapped in Red Meridian's eternal moment. Then I saw her. A woman I'd never met but somehow knew intimately. Dark hair, kind eyes. A smile that could light up my darkest days. She was standing in front of a house I didn't recognize, holding a child I'd never fathered, waving goodbye to a version of me that had chosen differently, that had walked away from the division, that had lived. That's not real, I whispered. That's just a possibility, a timeline that doesn't exist. But it felt real, more real than anything I'd ever experienced. I could smell the jasmine growing by the door, could hear the child's laughter, could feel the warmth of sun on my face and the peace of a life unburdened by secrets and shadows. All I had to do was reach for it, step sideways into that timeline. Let this version of me dissolve and become that other Marcus, the one who'd made better choices, the one who was happy. The pull was overwhelming, seductive. Escape from the echo. Escape from the mission. Escape from everything. But then I saw Ridley. He was everywhere and nowhere, his aircraft flickering through realities like a dying star. And his face. God, his face. He'd been handsome once, I could see that. Young and confident and full of life. But 43 years of temporal imprisonment had worn him down to something barely human. His expressions cycled through every emotion simultaneously: terror, rage, despair, hope, resignation, all of it compressed into a single eternal instant. He wasn't just trapped in time. He was being torn apart by it. His consciousness stretched across every second of those 43 years, experiencing them all at once and unable to escape any of them. And I realized something terrible. If I chose the other timeline, if I walked away from this mission, Ridley would stay trapped forever. Because I was the only one who could reach him now. I was the anchor point, the connection between his fractured timeline and reality. If I let go, there would be no one else. No other version of me brave enough or stupid enough to try. The choice Knox had warned me about. The choice every team had faced. Save myself or save him. Live a full life in a peaceful timeline, or stay in this broken one and risk everything to pull one man back from the abyss. It wasn't even close to a fair choice. It was cruel and arbitrary, and I hated it. But I'd already made my decision. I'd made it the moment I'd volunteered. Maybe I'd made it years ago, the first time I'd signed up for a mission that would cost me something irreplaceable. Maybe I'd made it the instant I was born, some cosmic die cast before I'd ever drawn breath. Or maybe choice itself was an illusion in a place where every possibility existed simultaneously. Either way, I let go of that other timeline, watched it fade like morning mist, watched that other Marcus and his family and his happiness dissolve back into the realm of might have been. And I reached for Ridley. My hand touched the cockpit glass, and the universe inverted. Suddenly, I was inside his timeline, experiencing what he'd experienced for 43 years. The moment of confusion as his instruments went haywire. The growing panic as he realized something was catastrophically wrong. The terror as he watched the ground rush up to meet him and then freeze, leaving him suspended forever in that instant of impending death. And the isolation. God, the isolation. Watching the world continue without him. Seeing people walk through the facility below, oblivious to his presence. Watching decades pass and fast forward while he remained locked in the same second. Screaming until his voice gave out, then screaming silently, then forgetting what his voice had sounded like at all. He tried everything to escape. Ejecting. Crashing, shutting down the engines, praying, bargaining with God and physics and the universe itself. But nothing worked. Nothing changed. He just kept falling, forever falling, while time flowed around him like water around a stone. I felt his madness creeping in, the slow dissolution of identity that came from existing too long in a state that human minds weren't designed to handle. He'd forgotten his own name for years at a time. Forgotten he was human. Forgotten anything existed beyond the moment of falling. And through it all, a tiny spark of hope remained. The belief that someday someone would come for him. Someone would understand what had happened and find a way to bring him home. That spark was me now. I was his only hope, his last chance. Our timelines were synchronizing. I could feel it. My bioelectric field merging with his, creating a bridge between his fractured moment and my present. But the process was agony. Every second of his 43 years was flooding into my consciousness, trying to overwrite my own experiences. I was becoming him. He was becoming me. We were becoming something else entirely, a hybrid consciousness stretched across decades. No, I gasped, though I wasn't sure if I was speaking aloud or just thinking. We stay separate. You're Ridley, I'm Hale. We're different people. But the echo didn't care about our individual identities. It wanted to merge us, to add us both to its collection of fractured souls. 2 more ghosts for Red Meridian's halls. Then I heard Rena's voice, faint and distorted but clear enough. 4 seconds. You need to pull him out now. 4 seconds. Out of the 8-second window. I'd already used half my time just reaching him. I gripped the cockpit glass harder, pouring every ounce of will into maintaining my own timeline while pulling Ridley toward it. Come on. Come with me. Now. His eyes met mine through the glass. 43 years of suffering and madness and desperate hope. And underneath it all, a question. Will it hurt? I don't know, I answered honestly. But it has to be better than this. He nodded slowly and let go. I felt him release his grip on the eternal moment, felt him stop fighting the pull of time and surrender to the current. He started moving forward, sliding through decades in seconds, his timeline collapsing as it reconnected with the present. But the echo didn't want to let him go. It had held him for 43 years, fed off his suffering, used his fractured consciousness as an anchor point for its own existence. Releasing him meant releasing its grip on reality. The distortion field began to collapse around us, reality and unreality swirling together in a maelstrom of temporal chaos. I saw the facility around us fracturing, splitting into multiple versions of itself, some on fire, some frozen in ice, some that had never been built at all. 2 seconds! Rena's voice was barely audible over the roar of collapsing timelines. I pulled harder, felt Ridley's consciousness sliding closer to mine, almost there, almost free. Then, something else reached for him. A presence in the echo. Something vast and old and hungry. Something that had been waiting in the temporal anomaly since before Red Meridian was built. Before humans had learned to fly. Maybe before humans existed at all. It wasn't alive, not in any biological sense. It was a knot in space-time, a paradox made manifest, feeding on the suffering of those trapped in its coils. And it didn't want to lose its prize. The presence wrapped around Ridley like a serpent, trying to drag him back into the eternal moment. And through our connection, I felt it reaching for me too, trying to pull us both deeper into the anomaly, to trap us forever in its endless hunger. 1 second, Rena screamed. No time to fight it, no time for anything except one desperate gambit. I let myself fall into the echo, fully, completely, surrendering to the temporal current and dragging Ridley with me. We plunged deeper into the anomaly, into layers of broken time that no human had ever reached. Past the frozen moments, past the fractured timelines, down to the source itself. And there, at the heart of the echo, I saw it. The chamber Knox had mentioned, the room that predated human civilization. And inside it, the device. It was beautiful and terrible, all impossible angles and crystalline structures that hurt to perceive. Technology or art or something that transcended both. And it was still active, still transmitting, still creating the temporal anomalies that had trapped Ridley and everyone else. This was the source. This was what had turned Red Meridian into a graveyard of frozen moments. And in that instant of perfect clarity, I understood what I had to do. The device was a beacon. A signal sent through time itself, possibly a distress call or experiment or message from a civilization that didn't exist yet or had ceased to exist long ago. And it had been creating echoes, temporal ripples that trapped anyone who got too close. But beacons could be shut down. Signals could be terminated. If I destroyed it. The realization hit like a physical blow. I could free Ridley and everyone else trapped in the echo. I could stop Red Meridian from creating more ghosts. All I had to do was shut down the device. But doing so would seal me inside the anomaly. Someone had to stay at the source. had to be present in this deep layer of fractured time to break the beacon's signal. And whoever did it would be trapped here, experiencing every moment simultaneously, unable to escape. I would become what Ridley had been, conscious, aware, trapped forever. Unless there was another way. 0 seconds! Windows closing! Rena's voice was almost gone now, reality pulling away from me like an outgoing tide. No time to think, no time to plan, just act. I reached for the device, pouring every ounce of my will into disrupting its signal. The crystal structures resonated, fighting back, trying to maintain their temporal beacon. But I was connected to Ridley now, and through him, to all the other trapped souls. Their combined consciousness gave me strength. We all pushed together. Everyone who'd ever been caught in Red Meridian's echo, everyone who'd suffered in its eternal moments, Ridley and the frozen personnel and the other teams and versions of myself from timelines that never were. All of us, united in one final desperate act. The device cracked. Not physically, temporally. Its signal fractured, the beacon splitting into 1,000 discordant frequencies that canceled each other out. The temporal anomaly began to collapse, layers of broken time unraveling as the source was disrupted. And in that moment of dissolution, I saw everything. Every timeline simultaneously. Every possible version of Marcus Hale that could ever exist. Infinite variations spanning infinite possibilities. Most of them died in Red Meridian. Some escaped, but never recovered, haunted forever by what they'd witnessed. A few made it out and managed to build some semblance of a normal life afterward. And one of them, just one, saw that other timeline again. The woman, the child, the house with Jasmine by the door. A future that could still exist if he made the right choices, if he survived. I reached for that timeline with everything I had. Reached for life and hope and the possibility of happiness beyond the darkness. Reality snapped back like a rubber band. I was standing in the chamber again, my hand pressed against nothing. The aircraft was gone. Ridley was gone. The distortion field had collapsed entirely, leaving only normal space and normal time, and the normal cold of an underground facility in the Nevada desert. Knox caught me as I stumbled, preventing me from collapsing. "You did it. You actually did it." "Ridley?" I managed to gasp. "Here," Briggs's voice, from behind me. I turned and saw him kneeling next to a figure in a flight suit, checking vitals. Captain James Ridley, looking exactly as he had in his personnel photo from 1980. Young, confused, alive. What happened?" Ridley's voice was hoarse, disused. "I was flying, and then... How long was I up there?" "A while," I said softly. "But you're down now. You're safe." He looked at me, and I saw confusion in his eyes, but not the madness I'd felt through our connection. Whatever I'd done when I disrupted the beacon, it had reset him somehow, given him back the parts of himself that 43 years of suffering had eroded. "What about the others?" I asked Knox. "The frozen people in the corridor?" Knox's expression brightened for the first time since we'd met. "Look." I turned toward the corridor we'd come from. The frozen figures were gone, or rather, they were moving, stumbling forward in shock and confusion. Dozens of personnel in 1980s-era uniforms, looking around in bewilderment as they tried to figure out what had happened. Some were crying, some were laughing, some just stood there, shaking, trying to process the fact that they could move again after decades of paralysis. Rena was among them, her laptop forgotten as she helped a young woman sit down. The temporal field completely collapsed. All the trapped consciousness were released simultaneously. They're all back in normal time now. "How long were we frozen?" one of the personnel asked, his voice breaking. It felt like forever. 43 years, Knox said gently. But it's over now. You're free." The man looked at his hands, flexing fingers that hadn't moved in over 4 decades. Then he started sobbing, deep heaving sobs of relief and grief and overwhelming emotion. I understood. I'd experienced a fraction of what they'd endured, and it had nearly broken me. They'd lived it for real, for years beyond counting. They would never be the same. None of us would. Briggs was coordinating with the personnel, organizing them into groups for medical evaluation and debriefing. His command presence had returned fully now that we were back in normal reality with clear objectives. But I barely heard any of it. I was staring at my hands, watching them shake, trying to process what had just happened, what I'd experienced, what I'd destroyed. The device was gone. The temporal anomaly was neutralized. Red Meridian was just a facility again, not a wound in space-time. But I could still feel echoes of it. Memories of timelines I'd visited, experiences that had happened to other versions of me. The weight of infinite possibilities collapsing down into a single present. Knox sat down beside me. "How do you feel?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm here, I'm alive, but I'm not sure if I'm the same person who walked into that field." "You're not," he said simply. "No one who experiences the echo comes out unchanged. You've seen too much, felt too much. You'll carry those other timelines with you forever. Like you carried Ridley." He nodded. "Like I carried Ridley. But at least now, I can carry him knowing he's alive. Knowing I finally did the right thing, even if it took 43 years and someone else's courage to make it happen." "It wasn't courage," I said. "I was terrified the entire time." "That's what courage is," Knox replied. "Doing it anyway." The extraction took hours. Medical teams arrived by helicopter to airlift the temporal displacement survivors to a classified facility for evaluation. Ridley went with them, still confused but physically unharmed. The device's destruction had somehow preserved their bodies, kept them from aging during their imprisonment. A miracle, the doctors called it. But I knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was just physics operating in ways we didn't understand yet. Temporal stasis preserving biological functions while consciousness experienced infinity. Rena spent the time documenting everything, her scientific mind already trying to make sense of the data we'd collected. "This is going to rewrite everything we know about temporal mechanics," she said, her eyes bright with excitement despite her exhaustion. "The implications alone, we could potentially develop methods to protect against future anomalies, maybe even harness controlled temporal effects for—" "No," Briggs said sharply. "This entire incident is classified at the highest levels. The device, the anomaly, everything that happened here, it all stays buried. We're not opening this particular Pandora's box." "But the scientific advances are too dangerous," Briggs interrupted. "What we experienced here today, that's not technology. That's a weapon, a trap, something that could destroy civilization if it fell into the wrong hands. It stays classified, forever." Rena looked like she wanted to argue, but she must have seen something in Briggs' expression that made her reconsider. She nodded reluctantly and began encrypting her data files. As the sun set over the Nevada desert, painting the sand in shades of amber and gold, I stood outside the facility and watched the last helicopter lift off, carrying Ridley and the final group of survivors toward whatever future awaited them. Knox stood beside me, hands in his pockets, looking smaller and older than he had before. Like the weight he'd been carrying for 43 years had hollowed him out, and now that it was gone, he wasn't sure what shape to take. "What will you do now?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "Sleep," he said finally. "For the first time in 43 years, I'll sleep without hearing Ridley's voice begging for help, without seeing those frozen faces, without wondering if I made the right choice." He paused. "What about you?" I thought about the timeline I'd seen, the woman, the child, the Jasmine by the door, a possibility that still existed somewhere in the quantum foam of infinite futures. I'm going to try, I said, to live, to find something beyond the darkness, to maybe become that other version of myself I saw in the echo. Good, Knox said. Don't make my mistake. Don't let the missions consume you until there's nothing left. Find your way out, while you still can. 3 days later, I submitted my resignation from the division. Briggs didn't try to talk me out of it. He'd seen the same things I had, experienced the same fractured timelines. He understood that some missions cost more than you could afford to pay. That sometimes survival wasn't enough. You had to actually live. I don't know what happened to the other survivors. They vanished into witness protection programs, or psychiatric facilities, or classified locations that officially didn't exist. The incident was sealed under so many layers of classification that it might as well have never happened. Red Meridian was demolished 6 months later. The official story was structural instability. The real reason was to ensure that no one could ever access the chamber where the device had been. The whole facility was filled with concrete and buried under 50 feet of sand and rock. But I know the truth. I experienced it. I carry it with me every day. Time isn't linear. It's not even circular. It's infinite and fractal and beautiful and terrible. And in places where the barriers between moments grow thin, you can see all of it at once. Past, present, future, possibility, all layered over each other like images on transparent film. I wake up sometimes at 3:47 a.m., drenched in sweat, hearing Ridley's voice on phantom radios. I see my frozen face in mirrors, screaming silently. I feel the pull of other timelines, other choices I might have made. But I also see that other future, the one I'm moving toward now, the house, the jasmine, the possibility of peace. I met someone 3 months ago. Dark hair, kind eyes, a smile that lights up my darkest days. I don't know if she's the woman from the timeline I saw, or if the echo was just showing me archetypes, symbols of what I might find if I kept looking. Either way, I'm trying. I'm building something beyond the shadow world I used to inhabit. It's hard. God, it's hard. There are days when the pull of the division's work becomes almost unbearable, when I want to dive back into the darkness because at least there, I knew who I was. But then I remember Ridley. 43 years trapped in a single moment, unable to move forward or backward, just existing in eternal stasis. And I remember that I freed him, that I destroyed the device and saved dozens of people from that fate. Maybe I can save myself too. The work I did at Red Meridian was classified, erased, forgotten by everyone except those of us who were there. But the scars remain, the memories, the knowledge that beneath the surface of normal reality there are wounds in space-time waiting to trap the unwary. That time itself can become a predator, hungry and patient and eternal. I work at a hardware store now. It's mundane, simple, safe. I help people find the right tools for their projects. I make small talk about the weather and weekend plans, and sometimes, when I'm stocking shelves or mixing paint, I catch myself wondering about other versions of this moment. Other Marcus Hales making different choices in different timelines, some still trapped in the echo, some who never went to Red Meridian at all. But this version, this timeline, is mine. I chose it. I fought for it. I destroyed a temporal anomaly and rescued a man from infinity to claim it. And every night, when I fall asleep next to her, when I smell jasmine through the open window and hear the quiet peace of a life unburdened by secrets, I know I made the right choice. Red Meridian is gone now, buried and sealed. A wound in space-time that's finally been healed. but I carry its lessons with me, about the price of heroism, about the cost of knowledge, about the terrible beauty of seeing too much, knowing too much, experiencing everything at once, and about the strength it takes to walk away from the abyss and choose life instead. That's my story. My last mission for the division, the one that ended my career and changed my understanding of reality itself. I work at a hardware store now, but I used to work for a secret division in the CIA, and my last mission will haunt me forever.